I was in New York City a few weeks back for On Air Fest, an audio and podcasting festival in Brooklyn. We recorded a live show there. I had 2 conversations with 2 women artists that we'll share with you today. Writer Ada Calhoun, whose novel Crush follows a long married protagonist surrendering to temptation. Ada wrote the novel just after she had separated from her husband, whom she'd been with since her 20s. And comedian Rosebud Baker, whose Netflix comedy special The Mother Lode unfolds in 2 interwoven timelines. One captures her at 8 months pregnant, the other after her child has arrived and is now 11 months old. So you see 2 versions of Rosebud on stage, one anticipating, one knowing. Both of these conversations are about moving into new phases of womanhood and getting to know how you're changing, what you're shedding, what you'll miss, what's exhilarating about what's new. And the night before I recorded this conversation in my hotel room, I watched the Hulu documentary about Sly and the Family Stone called Sly Lives. Questlove and the filmmaker Joseph Patel made it together, and it's really great. There is incredible music history, interviews with D'Angelo, Andre 3000, and members of the band. And for me, watching this made me remember a different live show that I hosted back in 2016 when I was in a different transitional moment, about 7 months pregnant myself. And I talked on stage then about the Sly and the Family Stone version of the song Que Sera, Sera.
When I was just a little girl, I asked my mother, what will I be? Will I be pretty? Will I be rich? Here's what she said to me. Que sera?
The singer wonders what she'll be. And she asks her mother, then her lover, and then her own children are asking her the same thing. And I just love their version of this song. So let's listen to this episode in that spirit. You'll hear Ada and Rosebud and me comparing notes about what can happen in a woman's life. And then you can hop over to Slate Plus and listen to me and Joseph Patel hear how Sly and the Family Stone put those questions to music and how Joseph and Questlove and their team put that to film.
Birth and giving birth are, you truly do watch your old self like go away. And a part of me was sort of just kind of like grabbing onto her, going like, no, but I realized when I became a mom, I was like, oh, I never respected mothers. And now I am one. That sucks.
This is Death, Sex, and Money. The show from Slate about the things we think about a lot and need to talk about more. I'm Anna Sale. Hey there, Death, Sex, and Money listeners. Before we start the show, I want to let you know about something coming up a little later in the episode. It's about Brooklinen and me. With spring right around the corner, now's the perfect time to refresh your space and create a bedroom that aligns with your unique lifestyle. Whether you want to upgrade your bedding, add layers of comfort, or reimagine how you use your space, Brooklinen can help you create a dream-worthy bed. More on that later in the show. Shop award winners and fan faves in-store or online at brooklinen.com. That's BROOKLINEN.com. Get 15% off your first order today. Today's episode is sponsored by NerdWallet's Smart Money podcast. Life comes with big money questions like, are target date funds a smart or lazy way to invest? Or should you pay off your debt or invest extra cash? Or can you deduct your dog as a home security system on your taxes? NerdWallet's Smart Money podcast has answers to these kinds of questions. Their finance journalists break down investing strategies, tax planning, and smart ways to build wealth and navigate big financial decisions. Work smarter, not harder, on your finances this year. Follow NerdWallet's Smart Money podcast wherever you listen, and stay tuned until the end of the episode to hear the Smart Money trailer. Ada Calhoun has written many nonfiction books. I have a very visceral memory of reading her 2020 book called Why We Can't Sleep. In it, she interviewed more than 200 Gen X women about their experiences of entering midlife. Did they feel accomplished? Did they feel secure? Ada suspected that many middle-class women of her generation felt, like her, in crisis. That they had been raised with the expectation of having it all, successful careers and families, but that social and economic forces like rising housing costs and healthcare costs had made that impossible. And instead, they felt disappointed and disappointing, like they weren't reaching a potential that had been stitched into their life plan. That book came out weeks before the pandemic started, and I remember reading it on a couch while trying to steal a few minutes away from my kids and the responsibilities of parenting during that time. It was an intense read. Ada's new book, Crush, is a novel. And in many ways, it circles similar themes, but this one feels like a rollicking rom-com. It follows a woman in midlife whose only child is about to finish high school, and her life starts to feel a little flat. And just as she's noticing this, a new flirtatious crush takes hold. Ada Calhoun is turning 49 this month, and she wrote this novel just after she had separated from a long marriage. Please welcome to the stage Ada Calhoun.
Hello.
Hello. Comfortable?
I am comfortable.
Okay, good. So, Ada, you started writing this novel in 2022. It starts with a mom, a woman, a writer who has had she's built a career as a writer. She is making it in New York, raising a family. It's hard. There's not enough money. There's never enough money. But she's not aware that she's dissatisfied. She feels like things are in their place, and she's holding it all together. I'm curious if there was like a moment in your life when you kind of looked up and thought, oh, I've built a lot that I'm proud of, and also I'm not sure the center here is going to hold.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the pandemic for me, and I think for a lot of women of this generation, was a real moment of where everything stopped. And I realized when was the last time I actually stopped and thought, what do I actually want? That question just wasn't a question that appeared in the course of a day.
What do I want?
What do I want? What do I actually want? Do I want all these things? And I think everything became so like changeable during the pandemic. All these things we thought were true no matter what, like you have to go to the office and you have to do this and have to do that. Suddenly, like, oh, no, you don't have to go to the office. And there are all these other things that the kids don't have to go to school. And then if those things can change, what else can change?
And when you started considering that question, what do I want? What did you notice yourself noticing?
That I had put everyone else first. I had been doing a lot of caregiving. I'd, seen multiple people through hospice, family members. I was the primary breadwinner for my family. And it was a lot. And I hadn't actually thought, wait a minute, like, where am I on all this?
Mm-hmm. What was the start of the pathway back to remembering that you could have opinions about what you wanted? Like almost like I'm picturing, for example, sometimes when I open up my phone, I'm like, I'm going to listen to some music right now. Can be this gap of like, what music do I like right now? I don't even know who I am right now. So when you started that process, like what was the first kind of scratch that you were noticing hitting that itch?
I mean, honestly, crushes. And I think that that crushes often show us what we want, that we haven't really been letting ourselves admit. I think, I remember like back having Tiger Beat posters on the wall. A rumble of knowledge about Tiger Beat. River Phoenix, the pullout from, yes, okay. And I think that's a moment early on in our lives where we're like, sort of this burgeoning sexuality. And what do we gravitate to? These sort of men who are like, or boys, who are just like a few years older, who are this gateway into this whole world of like, lust and desire and companionship. And so I think in middle age, what kind of crushes do we get? I think they're often different. They're not on these heartthrobs, right? They're on these people who show us some other version of ourselves.
The protagonist in this book, she begins to let herself flirt a little bit more with initiative after her husband offers that maybe she could kiss another man and tell him about it. And so it's this permission. It doesn't even start with her thinking, maybe I want to kiss somebody else. It's that maybe you could do this. And then once I picture her sort of lifting her gaze and she allows herself to notice that she's being noticed in ways and appreciated. And I thought that was so interesting. I think that there is almost a posture to caregiving and earning that can take hold where your head is down and you are taking care of your nest and you don't notice people noticing you as a desirous person. Did that happen for you?
Yeah, I like the physicality of like the looking down and then looking up. I think that's really true. And that's something I think we don't talk about enough for women in midlife, because there is a point when the people you were taking care of, the like older people, have died and the children you were raising are off on their own. And then you look around for the first time maybe in decades and think like, oh, wait a minute. Like if I'm not taking care of everybody else, who am I? And what do I want to do with the rest of my life?
And when you started writing about this fantasy romance and you got to conjure this man that the protagonist develops this flirtation, romance, and then deep love, what did you discover about your fantasies, your particular fantasies for the best crush there could be? What was he like?
First of all, the people listening at home cannot see you shimmy while you were showing this.
Well, I'm just thinking like, oh my God, what would I write down? Yeah.
Well, I think that the opposite of this kind of hunched over caregiving in this case was like this intellectual like life of the mind and this sort of like sexy, so people keep calling it like nerdy sexy, right? This
Which means sexy
for nerds,
for this crowd in particular. Yeah.
Yes. So yeah, just this idea that every relationship that I know personally that I like is trying to figure something out, so that the sexy relationship would be trying to figure out love and what we owe each other and what we owe ourselves, and this ransacking of world literature, trying to get answers with somebody else. There's fans of the library are here.
Yeah, they're like writing emails to each other. He's a professor. He's a hot professor, which I mean, really is maybe that's everyone's ideal fantasy crush.
I don't think so. I think in this room, yes, but I don't think in the wider world necessarily.
And I noticed the other thing that was particular, like, how would you describe how you wanted to idealize how much space he would give a woman going through this transformation as she figured out what she wanted? There was no like, what do you want? There were no time limits. There were no moments of him needing assurance that she was into it. She had full agency to go through the mess.
Yeah.
Which felt also fantastical.
Yes, it is fantastical. Yes. No, I think it was important for him to be a little bit of a blank slate in terms of his own desires outside of her, because I think she couldn't deal with any more messy people, right? And so the idea that he was basically this monk-like figure who had no other attachments and who was just basically had been waiting this whole time just with stacks of books, waiting for her to say, "Do you want to read all these books with me?" And then he was like, "Yes, I do." And that is the hottest thing I can possibly imagine.
And I started thinking about the ego involved in letting oneself reimagine their life after they've built a life that they love and have been proud of. And I think something that can get in the way of an honest assessment of where one is in midlife is just the term midlife crisis.
Yeah.
It's such a cliche to think, to be observed blowing up your life,
Right.
And then I thought, what if we called it midlife correction?
Change of course.
Yeah, like allowing, and corrections might be too judgy of your past, but it's about like, what if you think of it as a refocusing and a revising, as opposed to you failed somehow in the first half of your life and thus you're in crisis.
Yeah.
What did it feel like for you as you were taking the steps to reimagine what life could look like for you?
Well, I was actually just at the Taylor Swift Eras Tour in New Orleans with my best friend of 40 years and her 13-year-old daughter, whose first concert it was. You're welcome, child. And we were there, and she's a therapist. And I said, what are you seeing in women who are our age? And she said that they are all looking back at this have-it-all ideal and saying, you can't ask me to do everything and not also want everything.
What's that mean?
It means if I'm going to take care of everybody, if I'm going to make all the money, if I'm going to do all this stuff, I'm actually going to get what I want also out of life, whatever that means. If it's passion, if it's the time to make my own, podcast, if it is the time to write a book, time to go out with my friends, to go to the Eras Tour, even at an inconvenient moment, that's what I'm going to do. And she said, I wouldn't call it a midlife crisis. I'd call it a midlife awakening.
Ooh, awakening. That's even more positive than correction. And also, it's a rejection of martyrdom. It's like that's not enough of an identity.
Yeah, exactly. And I think so many of us who did decades of caregiving came to think of ourselves as these people who did for others, and that was the source of pride. And I think for me and for the character in the book, we start to think like, wait a minute, why am I taking pride in this thing? This isn't something to be proud of.
You do write with affection, though, of what it is to give love and to be I really liked the detail that the protagonist is someone who gives gifts to other people's children. Mm-hmm. Are you somebody like that also?
Yes, I have an army of godchildren. I'm raising them up. Yes.
I had a feeling. And so I guess there's this way that we can talk about the obligations of motherhood and midlife womanhood that makes those obligations feel so dreary only. Mm-hmm. And so how did you come to think of the both and of saying like, this is a part of me and it feels good to give gifts to a 4-year-old and also sometimes I get to be selfish?
Well, I think the motivation is a big part of it. Like, are you doing things out of love or are you doing things out of pride and duty? And I think a lot of times people that I know who go through this midlife awakening correction, their lives don't necessarily look that different on the other side. They might stay married, they might stay caregivers to their family, but that they've done some kind of inner work that means that they're doing it because they love these people and this is how they want to be with them in the world, and not out of this sense of like, okay, well, if I don't do all these things, nobody else is going to do them, so I have to do them. I think it really is about an approach to life more than it is having to blow everything up necessarily.
And how... Can I ask you a question about money?
Of course.
Awakening sounds
my favorite podcast.
Awakening sounds very luscious and like liberating, and also it's stepping away from a foundation of stability and a set of laws if you're married that provide you some measure of financial security that you're walking away from. You're splitting it in half if you're leaving a marriage, and so. I don't know. What was that like, taking that leap?
So my parents always said that you have to make choices between freedom and security at every turn, and you should always pick freedom. And I came to really believe that is true because there is no such thing as security. And I think that was part of the pandemic, was realizing, you could go do all the things you're supposed to do and take the safe job as opposed to the dangerous job, and you wind up not necessarily better off. Mm-hmm. So I think, and in fact, in my own life, I've found that over and over again, to take chances and risks always wound up being in the long run, financially much better for me.
And maybe they're not mutually exclusive. Like maybe there's like the other thing that I see in I think in your life and also in this protagonist's life, there's this community of colleagues, of friends, of love, a place where she has support. She's not on her own. Mm-hmm. So it's not a freedom where you're a sole operator.
Right.
And I think I don't know, like, when you were all of a sudden becoming an unmarried person, how did you sort of signal that to your community? And were there ways that there was help and support that you wouldn't have anticipated to feel yourself cared for?
Yeah, I mean, I have this unbelievable group of friends, and one of them was actually over at my new apartment, like setting up furniture. And she looks at I had like a whiteboard in my office with like all the projects I was working on, and she looked at it and she was like, "What I'm seeing here is that like you were holding yourself back before, because I did get so ambitious for myself in this way when I didn't have to share everything." And I didn't have to sort of navigate relationships with other people who, so my ex-husband wasn't working as much as I was. And I think there was some way in which I was thinking, okay, well, I shouldn't work that much as I could, because I should keep the peace at home.
Uh-huh.
Another like noise of
I heard a little protecting one's feelings, protecting feelings in the household by containing your ambitions.
And an economist actually told me there was this big study that was done where women who make more money at home also do more housework.
I am not one of those women. My husband is a very dedicated vacuumer, and I am not. And he wishes I were. There are so many lovely quotes about love and about feeling torn between duty and possibility in this book. That's part of the romantic correspondence across centuries. The quote that I found myself underlining and telling people over dinner was Dolly Parton.
Oh, yeah.
I hadn't heard this before. She describes the meaning of life, the purpose of life, is to find out who you are and then do it on purpose. And I love the structure of that sentence. And then do it on purpose could be this like neat triangle of thinking about your early life up to midlife is finding out who you are, and the second half of your life could be figuring out how to do it on purpose. Where did she say that? I love that.
It was on a late night show. I have to go
It's
look.
really good. When you think about doing your life on purpose, like, do you have the energy of, like, does your life right now feel like the propulsion of being in mad crush mode, or are you now in more like integration into real life mode?
So the arc of the book is a crush, right? It's like a big crush starts, crush ends. Because I think crushes end either when you get together with somebody or when they dissipate in some way. So yes, I am in integration mode and in Dolly Parton land, which I think Dolly Parton is so much about confidence, right? And like finding confidence as a woman. There's the other quote from her that I really love is somebody said, do you mind all the dumb blonde jokes? And she said, no, because I know I'm not dumb and I know I'm not blonde.
I think confidence is a really important word, because I think so often, I think in particular in this book, and for a lot of us going through life change, the thing that holds us back from taking a step is this waiting for permission, as like from some kind of gatekeeper, imagined gatekeeper. Did you have a crisis of confidence while you were going through this life reset, or do you feel like it sort of assembled your core sense of nerve?
Well, it's so funny because people did say permission would be a good title for this book, because I think it means so many different things. And it kind of kicks off with this husband giving his wife permission, like, okay, you can do this, in sort of this ethical non-monogamy kind of a way. And then she winds up giving herself permission to do lots more different kinds of acting out, if you want to call it.
What do you call it?
I don't know. What do you call it? I think like becoming herself, doing her life on purpose and pursuing love in all these various forms, and not denying herself this kind of love or that kind of love because it's inconvenient for other people.
Mm-hmm. And the other thing that I loved is there was this, you described the energy as a sort of return to adolescent adolescent affections, not just in the crush mode, but like, these are the mixtapes. This is the music I'm listening to. These are the writers that I love. It was sort of a teenage energy of like, I'm reassembling my identity based on what I am attracted to and desire.
Well, I think crushes always lead to new mixtapes, right? You always wind up with new music if you get nothing else out of a crush.
Ada Calhoun, thank you so much for
Thank you
joining
so much.
us. The new book is called Crush, a novel. Thank you. Coming up, I talked to comedian Rosebud Baker about her new comedy special, The Mother Lode.
At this point, I feel like having a kid in New York is like being gay in New York in the 50s. Like, you gotta hang out with people like you, and you gotta meet them in the park.
Last week in our episode, we shared stories from people affected by the rapid pace of change in the U.S. federal government. Changes that have come to pass, and ones that you've heard could be coming but aren't sure what to believe for now. We got another email from a listener named Heather Copeland. She wrote, "After listening, I felt inspired to chime in. We are irate about the current administration's reckless statements, threats, and decisions regarding veterans' benefits. My husband has been an active duty officer in the United States Navy since 1996. He will be retiring in May 2026 with 30 years of service. He has flown in combat and has been deployed multiple times." She continued, "We have made countless decisions about our family and finances over the past almost 26 years of marriage based on the promises of the United States government. We are extremely anxious about whether the government is going to honor its commitments to us and the huge impact that will have on our lives." Keep us posted on what you're noticing changing in your lives. You can email us anytime at deathsexmoney@slate.com. And I also have a request for some other sorts of stories from you, love stories. As we're moving into spring, here at Death, Sex, and Money, we've been thinking about the current state of dating and how people meet their romantic partners. At the moment, it seems like the apps still reign supreme, but we also noticed a push for more in-person dating experiences. So for an upcoming episode, we want to hear your stories of offline dating success. Maybe you asked out a stranger and it wasn't a disaster. Maybe you had a meet cute in real life, like something out of a rom-com. Or maybe you joined a singles running club or something like that, and it paid off. Record a voice memo with your story and send it to us at deathsexmoney@slate.com. We love hearing from you. And one more thing, don't miss my conversation with filmmaker Joseph Patel in the Slate Plus feed this week. Along with Questlove, he made the new Hulu documentary Sly Lives about Sly and the Family Stone. One of their hits, of course, is A Family Affair. And Joseph told me that for him, appreciating movies was a family affair when he was growing up in Fremont, California, in a community with lots of other South Asian American families. Joseph's dad sensed an opportunity.
My dad used to rent Bollywood movies out of our garage. And so, yeah, and so he
like
would
you were a video store.
Yeah, it was like a garage video store for Bollywood movies. And so, you know, he'd buy dozens and dozens, eventually hundreds of VHS cassettes of Bollywood movies, put them on shelves in our garage, and all the other South Asian families who lived in the neighborhood would come by and rent these movies for like $1.
Slate Plus members can listen to my conversation with Joseph Patel now. And if you are not yet a Slate Plus member, get on that. We make it easy. Just hit try free on the show page on Apple Podcasts, or you can find the sign up on our show page on Spotify, or just go directly to slate.com/DSM Plus. When you sign up, you get ad-free listening to all Slate podcasts and these special Slate Plus drops, which we do at least 2 a month of and are having a lot of fun making. I mean, a family-run Bollywood movie rental out of a garage in a suburban cul-de-sac. Who doesn't need more of those kinds of stories in their lives? Join in. Sometimes there just isn't enough time to research every single product you use in your home. And that's why you need Blue Land's eco-friendly cleaning products. They are certified safe and clean by the EPA, and they get the job done without you having to worry about the impact they'll have on your family or on you. Blue Land's refillable cleaning products are easy to use. You just get these reusable bottles, you fill them with water, drop in the tablets, and wait for them to dissolve. And refills start at just $2.25. There's cleaning sprays to hand soap to toilet bowl cleaner and laundry tablets. I use the laundry tablets. My kids love using the toilet bowl cleaner tablets. They just drop it in and get out a brush, and then the toilet's clean and I don't have to do it. Blue Land products are independently tested to perform alongside major brands and are free from dyes, bleach, and harsh chemicals. Blue Land has a special offer for listeners. Right now, you can get 15% off your first order by going to blueland.com/DSM. You don't want to miss this. blueland.com/DSM for 15% off. That's blueland.com/DSM to get 15% off. This episode is brought to you by Discover. If you've listened to Death, Sex, and Money for a while, you know how important acceptance is when it comes to personal growth. And you know who else is big on acceptance? Discover. You see, Discover is accepted at 99% of places that take credit cards nationwide. That's a whole lot of places and a whole lot of acceptance, which is great for Discover, but even better for you. Based on the February 2024 Nielsen report, learn more at discover.com/creditcard. This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. You chose to hit play on this podcast today. Smart choice. Progressive loves to help people make smart choices. That's why they offer a tool called Auto Quote Explorer that allows you to compare your Progressive car insurance quotes with rates from other companies. So you save time on the research and you can enjoy savings when you choose the best rate for you. Give it a try after this episode at progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates, not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy. Rosebud Baker is a stand-up comedian. She's written for SNL since 2022, during which time she had a baby. Her new Netflix comedy special explores that experience. It's called The Mother Lode.
There is like nothing new you can say about parenthood because every cliche is just true, except for this one. Parents used to say this to me. They'd be like, I didn't even understand what love was until I had a baby. And that is horseshit. Okay? Because the way I feel about my kid, it's not love. It's a brand new emotion that I don't have a name for, but it's a lot scarier than love. Like, I love my husband, love him, but I would never put my nose in his ass to check if it's just a fart.
It's time for Rosebud Baker, but before you come up on the stage, Rosebud, I want to tell everyone, you have been a stand-up comedian for a long, long time. You have been an SNL writer since 2022, during which time you had a baby and have raised up this baby to being a toddler, and you've made this special called The Mother Lode. And you also have figured out how you want to talk about family, and you talk about the family you're from. The family you're from includes your grandfather, James Baker, who was the chief of staff to Reagan and Secretary of State George H.W. Bush. And I want you to have that context as I tell you another favorite line of mine from your new special, where you talk about your daughter and you say, I don't care what her pronouns are, as long as she identifies with big cunt energy. Please welcome to the stage, Rosebud Baker. I'm really glad to have you.
I'm not a war criminal. I just need to make that clear. I just come from them.
Your new special is about the transformation that happens when one goes from being not a mother to becoming a mother.
Uh-huh.
And it is depicted by, you did 2 recordings of your act.
Yes.
One when you are 8 months pregnant.
Yeah.
And one a year later when your child is 11 months old. And throughout the special, it's splicing between the two moments in your life. And you look different. Not only like are you very pregnant as an 8-month-old, carrying an 8-month pregnancy.
She was as big as an 8-month-old. Yeah.
But you have like you can tell as when you were that pregnant, you have such swagger on stage, and it was more of like a waddly swagger. You know?
That's a nice way to put it.
And I found myself wondering, like, oh, I wonder if this was always the vision of recording this special pre-pregnancy and then again a year later, or if there was some contrast that you discovered after becoming a mother that made you want to splice the two together. So
it's complicated because yes, it was. The short answer is yes, that was the plan. It became the plan by having no plan. Like, I was pregnant and I wanted to put the material out because I was like, well, I'm not going to have time after I have the baby. But I wasn't really happy with where the material was. And then I was sitting at the Comedy Cellar with another comedian, Ryan Hamilton, who's hilarious. And I was like, I just feel like, I'm going to put it out, but I don't really know like if it's ready. And he was like, you could always just put half of it out now and half of it out later. And that really kind of got me going. Like, I was like, oh, that's, I'm not really going to have time to do that, but wouldn't it be cool if? And I went into my first year of parenthood knowing that I had to put a new hour together.
No pressure.
Yeah, no pressure. But I did. I was able to take the jokes from the first hour and kind of expand on them and get new jokes and see what my reaction to parenthood was, what my reaction to specifically motherhood was. And so when I filmed that second hour, I was like, oh, I don't need the first. I don't need it anymore. I'm just going to do the second hour. And then I found an editor who was like amazing. Her name's Kelly Lyon, and she worked at SNL, and she was a mom, and she is a mom. And she was like, I was like, listen, if you can put these together in a way that makes sense, great. If not, forget it. And so it really was changing month to month. Everything that was going on in my life was like expanding and contracting and including the idea for the special. So
yeah, and is this still true now that I'm a parent and not just pregnant?
Right.
Like, I think that I could really feel that. There were moments where you describe, immediate post-pregnancy, and I look back at your face then in the next shot of the 8-month pregnant person. I think she doesn't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And you described the very first hours of being a mother, the initiation into that identity via the labor and delivery nurses who come in to teach you how to breastfeed.
Right. Lactation twats is what I called them. That's what I referred to them as.
You're sort of like you've just had a baby, you've just had a C-section, and then these women come, and how do they speak to you? What do you notice about the social interactions?
Well, the first thing that I noticed about motherhood in general was that everyone was talking to me like I had a traumatic brain injury. Like, they were all coming in and being like, hey, mama. And it was like really disturbing. Like, people that I'd known my whole life that would never speak to me that way. Like, how you doing, mama? And I found like I was just getting this like rageful reaction to this voice that everyone was talking to me in. And like, I knew that I needed help. I knew I was like very raw and I needed help, but not like that, you know? And so my whole reaction to motherhood, and I knew this was going to come for me. Like, I knew, because I was so scared. I was scared of being pregnant. I was scared of motherhood. I was scared of parenthood. I loved my child-free life. And I had like a real identity crisis about whether or not I wanted to be a parent. It was like a real existential thing for me, even through my pregnancy and through motherhood in general. So yeah, my whole reaction to it was just like, I'm not ready to be that. Like, I'm not a fertility goddess. Don't talk to me in yoga teacher voice, you know?
And you describe your pathway to pregnancy involved an unintended pregnancy loss, IVF, and then an unintended pregnancy.
Yes.
And I just like when you talk about that question of like, do I want to do this? Like you kind of swerved and did all the variations of that. The really committed, I want to become pregnant. The like, I'm not sure if I want to become pregnant. And when you were 8 months pregnant and thinking on stage, on a comedy stage, is this for me? Like, how did you think about that? How did you commit to the idea of following this pregnancy through and becoming a parent?
So like you said, I had gone through, I was happily child-free and was like, we're good. And then got pregnant during the pandemic, and I went through 2 miscarriages. And the second miscarriage was a result of like, after that first miscarriage going, oh, I'm really curious about this. I actually want to try to do this. And then going through a miscarriage when you intended to become pregnant was like, especially one after the other, was kind of like, whoa. And then it kind of turned me off to the entire idea because I was like, I don't really even want to mess with that. I'm not going to go down that road. And then kind of just was like, okay, I'll do IVF and freeze my embryos, and then I'll think about this, and I won't feel like this pressure. So I did IVF, and then we had frozen embryos, and then my husband and I got pregnant 2 months later while I had COVID. Great use of $20,000. Fantastic use of $20,000. So I was like, okay, well, here we go again. And I truly, this is so dark, but I truly didn't think, I think like it took half the pregnancy for me to believe that it was even happening. Like I needed to like feel the baby kick to know that. And even after that, I was like, whoop, it's a toss up, you know, and I had real anxiety through my pregnancy. And just finally, you know, I guess like a part of my brain wasn't really registering that it was really happening. And I was like, I'm not going to believe that anything is real until I'm literally holding her. And I think that was like a trauma response probably, and also just a way to kind of protect myself from the disappointment and the just horror of going through a miscarriage the first 2 times. So yeah, I think once I had her and once we were like up to the finish line and I was kind of just like waiting, and I have to say like waiting to give birth really does feel like waiting to die. Like I was always like, how did people give birth? And then at the end I was like, I would walk into traffic if it meant that I could just get her out. And that's how it's become so untenable. So then at the very end, I was like, oh, I didn't even think about what's going to happen after this. And postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety and all of that stuff. And then, you know, I had her and my husband ended up getting postpartum anxiety. So I was like, well, I didn't plan for this either. And no part of it is like something you can plan for.
I bet you like keeping your money where you can see it. Unfortunately, big wireless carriers like keeping your money too. And if you're fed up with crazy high bills or bogus fees and quote-unquote free perks that cost more in the long run, switch to Mint Mobile. Even Slate's president, Charlie Kammerer, is using Mint Mobile, and he says more people should be trying this out. He says it was easy to switch providers. The SIM card was shipped to his home. He could use his existing phone and didn't even have to change his phone number. He's on the $15 a month deal and is getting unlimited talk and text over their 5G network at literally a fraction of what he was paying with someone else. Mint Mobile is here to rescue you with premium wireless plans starting at $15 a month. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can use your own phone and bring your number along with your contacts. Ditch overpriced wireless and get 3 months of premium wireless service from Mint Mobile for $15 a month. If you like your money, Mint Mobile is for you. Shop plans at mintmobile.com/DSM. That's mintmobile.com/DSM. Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month 5-gigabyte plan required. That's equivalent to $15 per month. New customer offer for first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See Mint Mobile for details. This episode is brought to you by the ACLU. The ACLU believes the Trump administration is pushing a dangerous and sweeping attempt to control our bodies, our families, and our lives. And right now, a case before the Supreme Court could drastically shape the future of bodily autonomy for all. U.S. versus Skermetti centers on a Tennessee law that restricts health care access for trans youth. Tennessee has asked the court to expand the ruling that overturned Roe versus Wade to allow it. The ACLU believes continuing down this road will hurt everyone's freedom to control their bodies and lives. The ACLU and its supporters believe everyone deserves the freedom to seek the health care they need, including gender-affirming care and abortion. Learn more at aclu.org/autonomy. I found myself wondering, you're describing how the transformation of parenthood for people who are carrying kids, for women, it happens physically before it ever happens in your head about your identity. Like that leads your boobs and your belly and, oh, this is happening. Something's changing that I'm not in control of. And when you thought about yourself as a comic, like, was that threatening, this idea of, how am I going to be an SNL writer with an infant?
Yeah.
And how did you sort of think about that?
Well, I just thought, to be honest, it wasn't like a graceful sort of, I didn't really talk myself through it very well. Like the first 6 months of being a mom, I was like, I can't let this change who I am. I can't let this change who I am as a comic. I can't let this change my career. I can't let this change blah, blah. And then like around 8 months, I fully like broke down because I was like, what kind of, and this is just my inner monologue, but I was like, what kind of mother doesn't want to be changed by motherhood? Like, how is it even worth it if you're not changed by it? And that kind of realization, it really just made me go, there's so many things in my life that I've gone through, bad or good, that I have resisted any kind of transformation from. And it's like, that's the whole point of life. So I forget what the question was.
Well, you describe in your act, you just say like becoming a mother was a death.
Yes.
And the audience kind of laughs and you're like, it is. Like that version of me is no longer me.
Yes. Yeah.
And I if you could, so you have been through a lot of profound moments of transition. Some that you chose, like recovery and sobriety. Some being a family member that lost a sister in an accident.
Yeah.
Where you couldn't go back and change it.
Right.
And going through the pregnancy loss and you couldn't go back and change that. Like, how do you think about grief and what you talk about on stage about finding out who you are as a mother? Like, how much is the grief entangled with the joy?
It's so entangled. They are the same because grief changes who you are on a cellular level. Like the loss of a close family member or a friend or someone who's just a part of you. That changes who you are. It changes everything about your life and the way that you look around the world. It's like the way that, when the pandemic happened and we would be walking around going like, how is this actually happening? How is this my life? And that's the same way that you deal with grief is the way that you deal with birth. And the way that I dealt with grief in my life was, it's not happening. I'm fine. And that's like how I dealt with that trauma of like becoming a mom. Was it's fine. I'm fine. I'm the same, everybody. I'm still cool. I'm still fun. It's like, no, you're not.
You are.
I'm a new version of cool that doesn't go out. And, in my mind, I'm like, it's cool. But I'm fine. Like it's kind of it's interesting because I'm getting more and more comfortable with who I am now. And my daughter is my old me in a way, like, and I can't say it's a pleasure to meet me. She lives in my house and I owe a lot of people apologies, apparently.
You describe, think of this child, she's going to have my attitude and a dad she's not afraid of. That's a dangerous combination for a white lady.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, my daughter is, I really called it. Like I knew. It's so crazy how we have our personalities before we've ever seen the light of day. Like I would be waiting to go on stage and she would be in my stomach just like rolling and kicking and just like beep, beep, beep. And I was like, oh shit, she's like never gonna sit still. And she really like never stops moving. It's the craziest thing. I mean, toddlers never stop moving, but she's like a pit bull on wheels, and it's terrifying. It's terrifying. She walked into my kitchen yesterday and was like, out. I was like, I don't even know if she knew what she said, but she wanted me to leave. And
you talk about on stage how you also have paid help, paid caregiving labor in your household.
Yeah.
You did not hire a white nanny.
This is way funnier in the special. I just need to say.
I think it's going to work. Just go for it. I think it's going to work.
Yeah.
What's your line about white nannies?
That white nannies will lose your kid trying to find themselves. I do need to say I was a white nanny. That's in the context of that I was one of them. Yeah. And a bunch of my friends were like, are you getting a nanny? And I was like, yeah, I think so. And they were like, are you going to get a white nanny? And I was like, that feels like a weird Google search for me to do. Specifically. Kind of have to clear the search history after that. But yeah, I do shout out to Jane. She is, my nanny's amazing. She's the reason I'm here right now. And shout out to moms that don't have childcare, because like stay-at-home moms, I got a brand new respect for those women. They are fucking warriors. Like I watched Night Bitch like 17 times. Like an uncomfortable amount of times, and did pretend to be a dog with my daughter on the floor. It killed like 2 hours.
And when you were looking back at the special and getting ready to put it out, and you were looking in the face of yourself 8 months pregnant, what do you see when you look at yourself in that moment? Like, do you feel tender towards her? Do you feel, oh my God, she was so freaked out and she's really trying to like demonstrate that she is a comic before she's this other thing that's happening? Like, what do you see?
I can't say that I look back on myself with any sort of like such an interesting question. Like I watch it and all I think about is how uncomfortable I felt and how like, what the hell were you thinking is really what I look back. Like, I can't believe I did it. I had gone through a full tour with SPD, which is like basically all of the joints that you have in your body loosen up when you're pregnant. And the joint that connects your pelvis, there's one joint, it loosened up so much that it separated. And so my hips were just sort of a barrel of like loose bones. And I was just like traveling with like loose bones. And I mean, I was so uncomfortable and my tits were so huge, like in an uncomfortable huge. And I, like people didn't know I was pregnant because my boobs were so big that people didn't notice the belly. I was like, when is it going to catch up? Like it was crazy. And I just look back at myself going like, oh, you had no idea what was coming for you. You were, if I was to get pregnant again, which God forbid, I'm like one and done. But if I was to get pregnant again, I would spend 9 months at a spa, like getting my feet rubbed, and that's all I would do. Like I do have some level of like, you didn't have to try that hard, babe, you know? But at the same time, I wouldn't have this special if I hadn't, and I'm really proud of it. And I feel like, you know, that is that's like going to be a limited feeling because most of the things that I make, I don't like within 6 months. So I'm just going to enjoy that now.
You're going to be in this moment.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Rosebud Baker, thank you very much. That's Rosebud Baker. Her new special is called The Mother Lode. It's on Netflix. And Ada Calhoun's new book is just out. It's called Crush. This conversation was recorded live at On Air Fest. Thank you to Katie Rayford and Emily Hodgkins from Slate, and to our hosts at On Air Fest for having us. The rest of the Death, Sex, and Money show team includes Zoe Azoulay, Cameron Drews, and Andrew Dunn. Daisy Rosario is our senior supervising producer. Hillary Fry is Slate's editor-in-chief. Please support the production of our show by becoming a member of Slate Plus. You'll not only be supporting the work of our team, you'll get access to ad-free listening to Death, Sex, and Money and all the podcasts that Slate makes. And we also make these special Slate Plus drops just for you, like my conversation with Joseph Patel about the great new documentary Sly Lives. You don't want to miss it. You can subscribe directly from the Death, Sex, and Money show page on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify, or just go to slate.com/DSM Plus to get access wherever you listen. Our theme music is by the Reverend John DeLore and Steve Lewis. And if you're new to our show, welcome. We're glad you're here. You can find us and follow us on Instagram @DeathSexMoney. I write a weekly newsletter. You can subscribe at annasale.substack.com. And you can reach us anytime with voice memos, pep talks, questions, or critiques at our email address, deathsexmoney@slate.com. We love hearing from you. I'm Anna Sale, and this is Death, Sex, and Money from Slate.
Today's episode is sponsored by NerdWallet's Smart Money podcast.
Money can be confusing. Should you invest in ETFs, get a travel rewards credit card, buy a house, or just build a really fancy pillow fort?
That could work. No shame in pillow fort game. Or you could just tune in for clear, research-backed financial insights.
I'm Sean Piles, a certified financial planner professional.
And I'm Elizabeth Ayola. We're the hosts of NerdWallet's Smart Money podcast, where you bring the money questions and we bring trustworthy information backed by NerdWallet's expert analysis, without the jargon or the sales pitch.
Our nerds do the research so you don't have to. We'll help you understand your options so you can make the best decision for your situation, from optimizing your investments and maximizing credit card rewards to making big money moves with confidence.
Plus, we keep it real. No lectures, no judgment. Just tips and tools you can use to build wealth and take control of your finances. Think of us as your financial GPS, helping you navigate your money decisions and avoid expensive wrong turns.
Whether you're planning for retirement, weighing a big purchase, or just want to make your money work harder for you, we've got insights that you can use in real life.
So, if you want practical, straightforward, and actually useful financial knowledge, plus a little bit of fun along the way, follow NerdWallet's Smart Money Podcast on your favorite podcast app.
Trust us, future you will thank you.